we are all going to die. Paradoxically, sex, the source of life, keeps reminding us of our mortality. When I started my graduate studies, I wondered which topic would fascinate me in the upcoming years. Because I was very young, and at the height of discovering the joys of life, the answer was easy: sex. And of course, I discussed sex-related issues with people around me, and I was shocked to discover that sex could be not only a source of joy and excitement, but also a source of pain, embarrassment, and even boredom. I remember talking to one of my friends, and she said, "I just don't understand the fuss around sex." I asked her, "Do you enjoy your sex life?" And she said, "Yeah, I do, but for me, it's not a big deal." Then I decided to explore the meanings of sex in people's life and how these meanings affect their relationship. Now, let's try to find out why sex may pose a problem to humans and how humans cope with it. As we all know, we are equipped with a sexual system that allows us to reproduce, that is, to pass on our genes to the next generations. The sexual system arouses our sexual urges and motivates us to look for a partner with whom we can mate. Without enjoying sex, or at least without being motivated to engage in sex, our species wouldn't have survived. If so, why do so many people experience mixed emotions about sexuality? Sex is a creaturely act that reminds us of our animalistic nature. Has anyone here visited the San Diego Zoo? No one. I'll tell you what's really going on in this zoo. I visited this place with friends, and we watched the chimpanzees. They were mating with each other all over the place. And of course, our presence did not interfere with their show. One of my friends noted, "Oh, I look like one of these monkeys when I'm having sex." And we all laughed, because she was right. Don't you agree? And this resemblance reminds us of our animalistic nature, and that, like all animals, we are doomed to perish. Animalistic sex reminds us of our mortality. Just to illustrate the association of sex with death, think about the expression "la petite mort," little death, which may refer to engaging in sex or reaching an orgasm. We may have sex like animals, we die like animals do. However, unlike animals, we are aware of the fragility of life and the certainty of death. And this awareness is terrifying and unbearable. To maintain our peace of mind, we must use defense mechanisms that help us distinguish ourselves from animals and remove the awareness of death from consciousness. One such mechanism is infusing sex with meanings that transform a creaturely act to something which is larger than everyday life. In one of my studies, I asked people to mention the meanings of sex in their life. And people mentioned many meanings that make sex much more than a creaturely act. For example, some people may see sex as a way to express uniqueness or creativity. Other people may see sex as a place where they can lose inhibitions and escape reality. Think about your reasons for engaging in sex. Why do you have sex? Instinctively, you may answer, I'm having sex because I'm horny. But when asked such a question, people mention other reasons for engaging in sex, such as having sex to obtain relief from stress or having sex to feel good about oneself. When we analyze those meanings, we discover that amongst the most prevalent meanings are those that reflect the belief that sex enhances the emotional bond between partners and promotes the relationships. Both men and women romanticize sex and associate it with love. And it works for them. Associating sex with love helps remove the awareness of death from consciousness. I'll illustrate this point using an old study. In this study, participants were asked to think either about the physical aspects of sex, such as the smell of sweat or the taste of fluids, or about the romantic aspects of sex, such as expressing love for their partner during sexual intercourse. Following this procedure, participants were asked to complete word fragments. For example, the string COFF could be completed to either coffee or caffeine. The findings show that following thinking about the physical aspects of sex, participants were more likely to complete words that were associated with death than following thinking about the romantic aspects of sex. That tells us that love protects us from the deadly connotations of sex. Out of all the meaning that can hide the deadly connotations of sex, as I mentioned before, why do we choose to romanticize sex and associate it with love? The answer may lie in the long period in which our kids depend on our protection. At what age can kids survive without our caring? Throughout human history, the survival chances of kids increased tremendously if both parents raised them together. Hence, we had to develop mechanisms that motivated us to stay together with a sexual partner until our kids could survive without our caring. If we look at the feature that distinguish our sexual system from that of other animals, we'll find indirect evidence that sex serves such a function. Sex may help build the emotional bond between strangers. For example, the most prevalent and preferred sexual position is the missionary position. Now think about this position. It allows belly-to-belly, skin-to-skin contact. It's the ultimate hug that we all crave. We also tend to have sex in private and fall asleep afterwards. These behavioral tendencies instill a sense of closeness between strangers. In addition, the neuropeptide oxytocin, which is known to facilitate emotional bonding, is secreted during foreplay, sexual intercourse, and at the moment that precedes orgasm. And we, as humans, experience an extended exposure to oxytocin because we do not limit our sexual interactions to the days that precede ovulation, but have sex across the menstrual cycle. But we don't have to rely on indirect evidence. We can ask people directly why they have sex. And as I told you, people say that they use sex to intensify their relationship. And they also behave in this manner. When we activate the sexual system by exposing people to sexual images, they behave in a way that allows them to get closer to strangers. In one study, we exposed participants to either sexual stimuli or neutral stimuli. Participants were seated in front of a computer screen, and we flashed really quickly those images so that participants were not aware of seeing those images. Following this exposure, participants were introduced to an opposite-sex stranger and were asked to disclose a personal story. We discovered that following the sexual exposure, participants were more likely to reveal intimate details about themselves than following the neutral exposure. That tells you that sex makes us chatty. And this chattiness allows us to initiate a relationship with potential partners. In another study, we exposed participants to either sexual stimuli or neutral stimuli, as I've just described, and then we asked participants to solve a list of problems in the presence of an opposite-sex participant, who was actually a Confederate, a research assistant who worked with us. When the Confederate reached the third problem, he or she turned to the participant and said, "Oh, I'm stuck. Could you please help me?" And the Confederate measured the time the participant spent in helping him or her using a stopwatch hidden in the pocket. We discovered that following the sexual exposure, participants spent more time in helping the Confederate than following the neutral exposure. That means that sex makes us not only more chatty, but also more helpful. And the magical effects of sex works not only in initial encounters, but also in existing relationships, and for both men and women. In another study, we asked participants to sexually fantasize either about their partners or about other people, or to fantasize about a positive interaction with their partner, which was not sexual. Participants were more likely to say that they would like to do something nice for their partner, following sexually fantasizing about this partner, than in the other two conditions. And people also behave in this manner. We followed couples for several weeks in which we asked them to record in a diary their sexual fantasies and their interactions with their partner. And we found that following sexually fantasizing about one's partner, people were actually more likely to behave nicely towards their partner. For example, people were more likely to give compliments to their partner and to express affection for their partner. People were also less likely to criticize the partner and ignore the partner's needs. So, if you are too lazy to have sex, you can still reap the benefits of sex by simply fantasizing about it. What have we learned here? For most people, sex is much more than just sex. And this complexity helps us distinguish ourselves from animals and remove the awareness of death from consciousness. Associating sex with relationships adds to this complexity because relationships are complex for so many people. The next time you have sex, think about your reasons for doing so. That may tell you whether you use sex to build your relationships or to boost your ego. As for myself, It took me many years to understand that I actually chose to study sexuality in close relationship to cope with my fears of death.